Moving right along, from RedState.com, here he comes, ladies and gentlemen, Erickson.
I promise I had nothing to do with that. He was wrapping up anyway. It's Glenn. Now look, I want to apologize when I start off today because generally I come up with something to say, and I've been stuck in every crummy airport west of the Mississippi in the past 24 hours. Showed up yesterday 15 minutes before I was supposed to do a 3-hour radio show. It's been an exciting time. So I'm just going to wing it. I've got a few things I want to say. I figure I speak 3 hours a night on the radio anyway. I can come up with something to say. So let me see if we can hold two competing ideas in our head at the same time. We're not a Nuts Roots Nation, so we should be able to do that. The first idea is that ideas matter. Now, this isn't something we talk about much anymore in this country, but let me just give you this understanding of my view of American history. Ideas matter because our founding was based on ideas. If you read the history books, read Bernard Bailyn's Ideological Origins of the American Revolution, you find if you read what they were writing about at the time, that it was probably the only conservative history in world history. They, unlike the French who wanted to progress beyond monarchy or many of the other revolutions, the Americans revolted because they believed they were Englishmen, heirs of the glorious revolution of 1688, and they wanted to go back to that. They didn't view themselves as colonists. They viewed themselves as Englishmen, and they finally decided, ironically enough, that the only way they could preserve their English rights from the glorious revolution was to rebel. And eventually they decided that the only way to make it possible was to secede and form a new union that was dedicated to those old ideas from 1688. Life, liberty, the pursuit of property. Now, we say the pursuit of happiness in the Declaration of Independence through a series of compromises, but the rights from the Glorious Revolution, if you read Thomas Paine, if you read John Hancock, if you read Samuel Adams, what they were talking about are life, liberty, and property. They were willing to die for those ideas. How many people do you think are willing to die for the idea of Obamacare? See, the ideas we fight over these days, conservatives and liberals together, it's not just the other side, it's our side as well. How many of us are actually willing to die for those ideas? The ideas that we founded this country on, they were willing to pledge their life, their fortune, their sacred honor for. How many of us are willing to do that today with the ideas we fight about? Certainly freedom, but freedom is such a nebulous concept this day and age. What is freedom for you may not be freedom for someone else. We don't talk about liberty anymore. We talk about freedom. What is the difference between liberty and freedom? Well, freedom is much more broad than liberty. If you go back to how they understood liberty when they were writing Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness, liberty was the freedom to pursue their destiny. Abraham Lincoln in the 1850s summed it up this way. He said, in this country, unlike any other country, all men make themselves. In other countries, the government makes men, sets their destiny. In this country, we have this concept of liberty we don't talk about a lot anymore, that we make our own destiny. Ideas matter. Ideas, when we want to change the way this country was formed, when we want to go beyond what the founders envisioned or intended, they left us a way. It's called amend the Constitution, something we don't do. We just leave it to 9 black-robed masters we bow down before, and through their Gnosticism, they divine what the Constitution means, even when it says something completely opposite of what they say it means. Ideas mattered. They were willing to die for them. If we're not willing to die for our ideas, we got something wrong with us. The ideas matter. Now let's do the complete opposite and hold these together. Ideas don't matter. Now, what do I mean by that? In the grand debate, most of us actually, you guys understand what I'm talking about here, that the ideas matter, that our country is a country founded on ideas. Countries in Europe, they were founded on wars, they were founded on divine right, they were founded on kingdoms. Here we evolved based on ideas. Our country was founded based on ideas. So ideas do matter, and we get that, but ideas don't matter in the general course of day-to-day debate. Why? Because most people in the media, most people you debate with on the left, they don't really care about all that stuff. They don't care about it. They care about the day-to-day stuff. They care more about emotion. They want to run the ad showing grandma being thrown over the cliff because Republicans want to change Medicare. Never mind that the Republicans want to change Medicare because it's really the way it's structured is going to bankrupt the country, and we should be able to control our own destiny, not Washington. They don't care about those ideas. It's over their head. They believe in good government. Good government being defined as where the stupid party and evil party get together. They do something that is both stupid and evil, and the media hails it as a bipartisan success. Never mind what it does. So now, why do you have to hold these two competing ideas together? Because I know many of you in this crowd, and I've heard how you begin to frame the debate when you start out talking to the other side. You start out on life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. You start out on the founders. You start out on the Federalist Papers. You start out on the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, which is all well and good, except it sails over most people's head. So I would tell you that when we frame the debate, when you go home to your state house and your state senate and you begin framing the debate with your legislators, when you begin framing the debate with the media back home or with the national media, be sure what you believe. Be sure you know that the ideas matter. The ideas that founded this country matter. The ideas that you hold dear are the foundational ideas of this country. Understand that, but understand that you're about to debate with someone who probably thinks you're a little weird for caring. So don't start out your conversation with the other side with the ideas matter. Build to it. It should be the great crescendo, the historic moment when you get to that point of the debate. Start out with the reality of the situation, the day-to-day in the situation. Start out with a small business owner who's going to go out of business when Barack Obama raises his taxes. Where are those jobs going to go? Start out with what Hazlitt said. Henry Hazlitt in Economics in One Lesson said the difference between the bad economists and the good economists, between the liberal and the conservative, is that the bad economist, like the liberal, sees only what is seen and ignores what is unseen. So when you hear about the guy who's going to lose his insurance, he's going to lose his job, and so we must build a government safety net that punishes us all to help this one person, frame the debate as what about the other 18 people in that person's employer? The costs are going to go up on that employer, so you're worried about the one guy, and we should help him as a society, but what about the 17 or 18 other people who are going to lose their job because you've raised the cost of doing business? Remember, when you frame your debate, there's the great unseen out there. Like Henry Hazlitt said, and I'm a big proponent of Economics in One Lesson if you've never read this, he wrote one of the best lines in any book, that we are the tomorrow that the bad economists of the past told us to ignore. We've arrived at that moment in the future where the people in the 1960s structuring Medicare said, it's so far off in the future, who cares about the costs? Well, guess what? We do. Kind of like the great oil debate from 10 years ago. We can't afford to drill because it'll take 10 years to get the oil. Hello? Remember the unseen when you frame your debate. Remember going forward that yes, the ideas matter, but before you get to the ideas of life, liberty, the pursuit of property, the separation of powers, all the great ideas on which this country was founded based on a lot of bloodshed, understand that what it boils down to is you've got to be able to structure your debate when dealing with the media, when dealing with the left, when dealing with your Republican state representatives in your state house who probably aren't all that smart anyway. You've got to be able to frame your argument not on the great ideas of the past, but on the ideas of the here and now, on the guy who's going to lose his job because costs are going up, on the idea that you're going to drive business out of your state, on the idea that people can pack up and move. I'm about out of time and having a hard time maybe conveying the point, but don't forget the ideas of the past. Don't forget what our founders were willing to do, and don't forget that we are the heirs also of the glorious revolution. We are the heirs also of what our founders did. And be energized and be excited by that, but also, very importantly, remember that when you as an activist for free markets and liberty go off and want to engage people on the ideas of free markets and liberty, if you start off with Thomas Paine or Samuel Adams or even Henry Hazlitt, or God help you if you start off with F.A. Hayek, you're going to bore them. Don't bore them. excite them about the possibility of American ingenuity and innovation and what the law is going to mean for your neighbor, not for society as a whole, because that's what liberals do. Oh, society as a whole needs this. I think it was said one time that Republicans, conservatives, they care very much about their neighbor and maybe not society as a whole, and liberals care very much of society as a whole, but they hate their next door neighbor. Having lived next to a leftist who has heckled me for many years, we just moved. I get that. Well, we are a society of individuals, so I think it's good that conservatives care about the individual. When you make your argument moving forward, whether you're on a blog, whether you're writing a letter to the editor, whether you're dealing with a state representative or state senator or the media, remember you want to address first how their bad legislation is going to affect not you, because that's selfish, how it's going to affect your neighbor. And then open their eyes to the fact that we as a country are built on bold ideas. So go forth boldly. Remember what Jesus said, go forth and witness. Don't be afraid to go out and preach free markets and liberty. Just remember how you do it. You don't want to bore people. You want to excite them to the idea. You don't want to turn off your state representative, even though you know he's not quite bright. You want them to understand the day-to-day impact of what they're doing in your home state really does matter at an individual level. Thank you very much.